as my husband, Mark, and I pulled into the parking lot of the elegant venue where my younger sister Lily's wedding was set to unfold. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the manicured gardens. Tucked securely inside Mark's tailored jacket pocket was an envelope containing $10,000, our generous wedding gift to Lily and her soon-to-be husband, Jake. On top of that, we had already contributed nearly a third of the wedding's expenses, a significant sum that included everything from the floral arrangements to the caterer's hefty bill. It was no small amount, but Mark's demanding role as an investment banker and my position as a marketing director at a thriving firm meant we could manage it. Besides, Lily was my only sister, and I wanted her day to be perfect. As we stepped out of the car and made our way toward the venue's grand entrance, I felt a mix of excitement and anticipation, though a faint undercurrent of unease stirred within me. The moment we entered the bustling reception hall, my eyes found my parents across the room. Mom was fussing over Dad's slightly crooked tie, her fingers deftly adjusting the knot while he feigned irritation, a playful glint in his eyes. Despite his mock protests, a soft smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. They looked radiant. There was no other word to describe it. Mom's face glowed with unrestrained joy, her laughter ringing out as she chatted with a guest, and Dad seemed rejuvenated, as if the years had melted away. The sight of them, so vibrant and happy, twisted something deep in my gut. I couldn't recall them looking this elated at my own wedding 5 years earlier. They had been pleasant enough back then, of course, offering polite smiles and congratulations, but this was different. Their pride and joy seemed to radiate outward, filling the room. I quickly pushed the thought aside, chastising myself for letting old insecurities creep in. Today was about Lily, not me. The ceremony itself was flawless, a vision of romance and elegance. Lily was breathtaking in her ivory gown, the delicate lace trailing behind her like a whisper of starlight. Jake, her fiancé, now her husband, gazed at her with such adoration that it was impossible not to feel a pang of happiness for them. I sat between my parents and Mark, trying to immerse myself in the beauty of the moment, but that nagging feeling lingered. My parents' reactions seemed different, more intense, than they had been at my wedding. I told myself I was overthinking it, that love wasn't a competition, but the doubt gnawed at me. After the vows were exchanged, the reception kicked off with a lively buzz. We ate a sumptuous meal, sipped champagne, and danced under the twinkling chandeliers. The energy in the room was infectious, and for a while, I let myself get swept up in the celebration. Then came the speeches. The best man delivered a heartfelt toast, followed by the maid of honor's witty anecdotes. Finally, my parents stood together at the front of the room, Mom gently tapping her glass with a spoon to draw everyone's attention. "We want to thank you all for joining us today to celebrate our beloved daughter's wedding," Mom began, her voice warm and steady. There was something in the way she emphasized beloved that made me shift uncomfortably in my seat. Mark must have sensed my unease because he reached for my hand under the table, giving it a reassuring squeeze. Dad took over, his voice brimming with pride. "Watching Lily grow into the incredible woman she is today has been the greatest joy of our lives. She's always been special, a light in our home, bringing warmth and happiness wherever she goes." I smiled and nodded, but my mind was racing. Of course they loved Lily. She was their daughter, just as I was. But the way they spoke, the way their words seemed to elevate her above all else, stirred a familiar ache. Was I being oversensitive? I pushed the thought away, focusing on the clinking glasses and the applause that followed their speech. Then Mom reached into her purse and pulled out a small stack of papers, holding them up for the room to see. "Jake, Lily," she said, her smile widening, "your father and I wanted to give you something truly special to start your new life together." She paused for effect, then announced, "We're giving you our family home as a wedding gift." The room erupted in gasps, followed by a wave of enthusiastic applause. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Beside me, Mark went rigid, his hand tightening around mine. I stared at my parents, then at Lily, waiting for someone to laugh, to say it was all a joke. But it wasn't. My parents beamed with pride, their faces alight with joy. Lily, tears streaming down her cheeks, threw her arms around Jake, who looked stunned, his mouth slightly agape. The house, the one I'd been paying the mortgage on for the past 5 years because my parents could no longer afford it after Dad's hours were cut and Mom's arthritis forced her to scale back her work, was now Lily's. And not once had they mentioned this plan to me. Not a single word. I forced a smile, my lips trembling with the effort, but inside, I was screaming. 5 years of payments, of sacrificing my own savings to keep that house in the family, and they hadn't even consulted me. Worse, Lily didn't look surprised at all. Her tears were joyful, her expression one of gratitude, not shock. She had known. She had known, and she hadn't said a word to me either. "Tessa, you okay?" Mark whispered, his voice low and concerned. "Fine," I replied through gritted teeth, my smile still plastered on my face as Lily and Jake made their way to the front to embrace my parents. The applause continued, a roaring reminder of my exclusion. An hour later, I couldn't take it anymore. The laughter, the toasts, the celebration, it all felt like a mockery of the betrayal churning inside me. I found Mark by the bar, nursing a drink and watching the crowd. "Can we leave?" I asked quietly, my voice barely steady. He took one look at my face, his brow furrowing with concern. "I'll get our coats," he said without hesitation. We made our excuses. Mark had an early meeting. We were so sorry. What a beautiful wedding. Congratulations again. And slipped out before anyone could protest too much. The moment we were in the car, the dam broke. Tears streamed down my face as I sobbed, my voice raw with hurt. "I can't believe they did that."
5 years, Mark.
"I've been paying that mortgage for 5 years, and they didn't even tell me they were planning this." "I know," Mark said grimly, his hands gripping the steering wheel as he started the engine. "It's unbelievable." "And Lily knew," I continued, wiping my eyes angrily. "Did you see her face? She wasn't surprised at all. She knew, and she didn't say a word to me." "It's not about the money," I added, my voice breaking. "I don't care about the money."
But they could have talked to me. They could have asked.
As we drove home through the quiet night, memories flooded back, each one a sharp reminder of the favoritism I'd tried to ignore for years. I thought of my college graduation, when my parents had given me a card with $50 tucked inside, a kind but modest gesture. 2 years later, when Lily graduated, they bought her a brand new car, shiny and red, parked in the driveway with a giant bow on top. I remembered my 21st birthday, when they skipped my dinner to attend Lily's volleyball game. Not a championship, not even a particularly important match, just a regular game. The more I spoke, the more examples poured out. The way they attended every one of Lily's events but always had excuses for missing mine. The way they bragged about her accomplishments to anyone who would listen but rarely mention mine. By the time we pulled into our driveway, I was exhausted, my throat raw from crying and my heart heavy with the weight of it all. "Where are your parents going to live now?" Mark asked as we got ready for bed, his voice gentle but practical. "If they're giving the house to Lily and Jake, what's their plan?" I shrugged, pulling on my pajamas with more force than necessary. "I have no idea. That's not my problem anymore." I turned off the bedside lamp and rolled over, trying to ignore the ache in my chest that refused to fade. For the next 3 weeks, I threw myself into work, coming home each evening and doing my best to push the wedding, the house, and the hurt out of my mind. Then one evening, my phone rang. The screen lit up with Mom's name, and against my better judgment, I answered. "Tessa, honey," she said, her voice bright and cheerful, as if nothing had happened. "We're having a family dinner this weekend. Lily and Jake are back from their honeymoon, and we'd love for you and Mark to join us." I wanted to say no. I wanted to hang up, to tell her exactly how betrayed I felt. But some small, foolishly hopeful part of me wondered if maybe, just maybe, they'd apologize. Maybe they'd explain. "Fine," I said flatly. "We'll be there." Saturday arrived too quickly. When we pulled up to the house, Lily and Jake's house now, I noticed Lily's car in the driveway, parked beside my parents' old sedan. We walked up to the front door, and I hesitated before ringing the bell. It felt strange, almost wrong, not to use my key, but this wasn't my parents' house anymore. It was Lily and Jake's. Mom answered the door, her smile as wide as ever. "Tessa."
Mark.
Come in, come in." She pulled me into a hug, oblivious to the stiffness in my posture. I hugged her back, but it was mechanical, devoid of warmth. Dad was in the living room with Jake, the two of them engrossed in a football game on the TV. He stood when we entered, offering Mark a firm handshake and me a quick, awkward hug. "Where's Lily?" I asked, noticing her absence. "Oh, she's changing the curtains in the dining room," Mom said casually, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "She's been redecorating all week." My blood boiled. 3 weeks. It had been 3 weeks since the wedding, and Lily was already making the house her own, swapping out Mom's familiar blue curtains for new cream-colored ones. We walked into the dining room, and there she was, my sister, standing on a stepladder, humming softly as she adjusted the fabric. "Dinner's ready," Mom announced, clapping her hands. "Everyone sit down." We took our seats around the familiar oak table, me between Mark and Dad, with Mom and Lily across from us and Jake at the head. The spread was impressive, Mom's famous pot roast surrounded by roasted vegetables and fluffy dinner rolls, but I had no appetite. The first 10 minutes were filled with Lily and Jake recounting their Hawaiian honeymoon in vivid detail, the turquoise waters, the lush rainforests, the romantic dinners on the beach. I picked at my food, nodding occasionally while Mark asked polite questions to keep the conversation flowing. Finally, when Lily paused to take a sip of water, Mom cleared her throat. "So, Tessa," she said, her tone shifting to something more serious, "we wanted to talk to you about something. As you know, we've given the house to Lily and Jake as their wedding gift." I froze, my fork hovering over my plate. Mark's hand found mine under the table again, his grip steady. I waited, my heart pounding, for what she would say next. Would she acknowledge my contributions? Would she apologize for not telling me? But as Mom continued, her words only deepened the wound, leaving me to grapple with the reality of my family's choices and the unspoken hierarchy that had always placed Lily first. "Yes," I said flatly, my voice barely concealing the storm brewing inside me. Mom continued, her tone breezy, as if she hadn't noticed the sharp edge in my response. "The thing is, Lily and Jake are a young couple just starting their life together. They need their own space, a place to build their future." I remained silent, my fork still in hand, waiting for her to get to the point. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his eyes darting between Mom and the table. "What your mother is trying to say," he interjected, his voice tinged with unease, "is that we can't live here with them. They need privacy, to start their marriage on the right foot." "I see," I replied, my tone neutral, though my mind was racing. Where was this going? I glanced at Lily, who suddenly found her mashed potatoes utterly fascinating, her fork moving in slow, deliberate circles. Mom and Dad exchanged a quick look, a silent conversation passing between them. "Well," Mom said slowly, drawing out the word as if testing the waters, "we've been thinking about it, and we've decided we're going to move to your vacation home. It's the perfect size for us, and it's in such a lovely, quiet area. Just what we need at this stage in our lives." I set my fork and knife down carefully, the clink of metal against the plate louder than I intended in the tense silence. The vacation home they were referring to as a cozy, 2-bedroom cottage nestled in the rolling hills outside the city. I'd bought it with my own money years ago, before I even met Mark, scraping together every dime from overtime shifts and weekend gigs. It was my refuge, a sanctuary where I could escape the chaos of urban life and recharge. Occasionally, I'd let my parents borrow it for a weekend getaway, but it was mine, a tangible symbol of my hard work and independence. "Let me get this straight," I said, keeping my voice level despite the anger rising in my chest. "You gave your house, the one I've been paying the mortgage on for 5 years, to Lily without consulting me. And now you think you're going to move into my vacation home without even asking me first. Tessa," Dad said, his brow furrowing in disapproval, "be reasonable. Where else are we supposed to go? We can't stay here. That's not my problem. I snapped, my composure slipping. You had a house. You chose to give it away without even mentioning it to me, even though I've been keeping it afloat for years. And now you expect me to just hand over my vacation home to you? No discussion, no permission? It's not like you use it that much, Lily chimed in, her voice sharp and defensive. She finally looked up from her plate, her eyes narrowing as she met my gaze. I turned to her, unable to hide my incredulity. Are you serious right now, Lily? It's my property. I bought it with my money. I get to decide who uses it and when. Not you, not Mom, not Dad, me. Mom's face had gone pale, her hands clutching the edge of the table. You can't mean that, Tessa. You're not saying no, are you? That's exactly what I'm saying, I replied, my voice firm. No, you are not moving into my vacation home. Not now, not ever. The table fell silent, the air thick with tension. Then Mom's face crumpled, and she let out a dramatic sob. How can you do this to us? She cried, her voice trembling. After everything we've done for you? We're your parents, Tessa. Yes, and as my parents, you might have thought to discuss this with me before giving away a house I was paying for and deciding to take over my property. I shot back, my anger spilling over. You don't get to make unilateral decisions about my life and my belongings and then act like I'm the bad guy for saying no. You don't have the right to refuse us, Mom said, her voice rising, a mix of indignation and desperation. We have nowhere else to go now. You actually had a house, I pointed out, my voice cold. The one I've been paying the mortgage on for 5 years. But you gave it to Lily, so now it's your problem to figure out where to live. Lily slammed her hand on the table, the sudden noise making everyone jump. God, Tessa, you're so cruel and greedy, she shouted, her face flushed with anger. You've always been jealous of me because Mom and Dad love me more. You've always been envious of our relationship. I stared at her, stunned by the venom in her words. For a moment, I was speechless, the accusation cutting deeper than I wanted to admit. Then, a strange calm settled over me. If Mom and Dad love you so much, I said, my voice steady, and you love them so much, then why don't you let them live here with you? This is a 4-bedroom house, Lily. Plenty of room for all of you. Lily's mouth snapped shut, her eyes darting away as she suddenly found her plate fascinating again. That's not the point, she mumbled, her confidence faltering. Jake and I need our privacy. And I need my vacation home. I countered, my tone unyielding. Sounds like we both have needs. My parents started talking over each other, their voices overlapping in a chorus of accusations. You're being so selfish, Tessa, Dad said. This is disappointing, Mom added, her tears flowing freely now. We raised you better than this. I stopped listening, their words blurring into a familiar refrain of guilt and manipulation. I stood up, grabbing my purse from the back of my chair. Mark, I said, turning to my husband, I think we're done here. The next day, my phone was inundated with messages and calls from my parents and Lily. Some were accusatory, branding me selfish and ungrateful. Others were pleading, begging me to reconsider. A few tried to guilt-trip me with reminders of everything they'd done for me over the years, conveniently ignoring their recent actions. I showed some of the messages to Mark, who shook his head in disbelief, his jaw tight with frustration. I think I need to block them for a while, I said, my voice heavy with exhaustion. I can't keep reading these. It's too much. Do what you need to do, Mark replied, pressing a gentle kiss to the top of my head. Take care of yourself first, Tessa.
So I did.
I blocked their numbers and social media accounts, at least temporarily, craving the space to think and process the whirlwind of betrayal and confrontation. For 2 weeks, I relished the blissful silence, no calls, no texts, no family drama. Mark and I settled back into our routine, work, quiet evenings at home, and occasional dinners with friends who didn't try to claim my property. It was a welcome reprieve, a chance to breathe. Then, one afternoon, I was at my desk, reviewing a marketing campaign when my phone buzzed with an alert. My stomach dropped as I read the notification from the security system at my vacation home. Motion detected. Front door opened. I quickly opened the app, my heart pounding. Someone had used a key to unlock the front door but hadn't disabled the alarm system. The security company would be calling any second to verify if this was authorized entry. Sure enough, my phone rang almost immediately. "Miss Wilson, this is Safeguard Security," a calm voice said. "We've detected entry at your property on Pine Ridge Road. Is this authorized?" "No," I said firmly, my voice steady despite the anger bubbling inside me. "I'm not there, and no one has permission to be there. Please send the police immediately." An hour later, my phone rang again. "Miss Wilson, this is Officer Reyes from the local police department," the voice said. "We're at your property on Pine Ridge Road. We have 2 individuals here who claim to be your parents. They have keys to the property, but admitted they don't have permission to be here." I closed my eyes, my suspicions confirmed. "Yes, they're my parents," I said, my voice tight, "but they absolutely do not have permission to be in my house." "I understand," Officer Reyes replied. "How would you like us to proceed? We can remove them from the property, but since they used a key rather than forced entry, it's a bit of a gray area for charges." "I'll come up there," I decided, glancing at the clock. "My husband and I can drive up now. We're about an hour away." The drive was tense, the silence in the car broken only by the hum of the engine. I alternated between anger and disbelief, my mind replaying the dinner conversation. How could they do this? After I explicitly told them no, they tried to move in any way. Who does that? When we pulled up to the cottage, a police cruiser was parked in the driveway. 2 officers stood near the front porch, and sitting on the steps were my parents, looking utterly miserable. Several suitcases and boxes were piled beside them, a pathetic display of their thwarted plan. Dad stood up when he saw us, his face a mix of relief and defiance. "Tessa, thank God you're here," he said, stepping forward. "Tell these officers there's been a misunderstanding." I ignored him, approaching the officers instead. "Thank you for responding so quickly," I said, my voice calm but firm. "These are indeed my parents, but they do not have permission to be here." One of the officers nodded, jotting something in his notebook. "Ma'am, do you want to press charges for trespassing?" Mom gasped, her hand flying to her chest. "Tessa, you wouldn't." I turned to her, my patience long gone. "You broke into my house after I specifically told you no. What did you think would happen?" "We didn't break in," Dad protested, his voice rising. "We used the key you gave us." "This is all your fault," Mom suddenly shouted, standing up and pointing an accusing finger at me. "If you had just let us stay here like we planned, none of this would have happened. We wouldn't be standing here being treated like criminals." I stared at her, shocked by the outburst. "My fault," I repeated, my voice low and incredulous. "You gave away a house I was paying the mortgage on without consulting me, then tried to take over my property without permission, and somehow this is my fault." "You're so arrogant," Mom continued, ignoring my point, her voice trembling with rage. "So irresponsible. We raised you better than this. We gave you everything." "Mom, stop," I said, my voice cutting through her tirade. "You're embarrassing yourself. You and Dad just tried to break into my house to move in after I explicitly told you no, and now you're standing here, in front of police officers, yelling at me about how I'm being irresponsible." That seemed to get through to her. She abruptly closed her mouth, her eyes still blazing with indignation, but she said nothing more. I turned back to the officers. "I'd like a word in private, please." We stepped away from my parents and Mark, out of earshot. "I don't want to press charges against them," I said quietly, my voice heavy with resignation. "They're still my parents, even if they're being absolutely ridiculous right now. But I can't have them staying here either." The officer nodded, his expression sympathetic. "We understand. Family situations can be complicated. We can take them to the station for a few hours, give them a stern warning about trespassing, and then release them. Sometimes a few hours in a holding cell can be a good reality check." I considered this, weighing the options. That might be the wake-up call they need. I agreed. Yes, please do that. I walked back to where my parents were sitting, their faces a mix of defiance and humiliation. The officers are going to take you to the police station for a few hours, I said, my voice firm. I'm not pressing charges, but I want you to understand how serious this is. You cannot just move into someone's house without permission, even if you're family. As the officers escorted my parents to the cruiser, their belongings still piled on the porch, I arranged for a locksmith to come immediately. While we waited, I contacted a local storage facility and paid for 1 month's rental, arranging for my parents' suitcases and boxes to be transported there. I texted the details to Lily, since my parents' numbers were still blocked, letting her know where their things would be. The locksmith arrived promptly, changing all the locks on the cottage. By the time we left, the house was secure again, its peaceful exterior belying the chaos that had unfolded. On the drive home, I felt drained but also strangely liberated. For the first time in my adult life, I had stood up to my parents' manipulation, refusing to be taken advantage of. What do you think they'll do now? Mark asked as we neared our apartment, his voice breaking the comfortable silence. Probably go crying to Lily, I guessed, a wry smile tugging at my lips. She got the house. She can take the responsibility that comes with it. I wasn't naive enough to think this was over, though. Knowing my mother, she would find a way to spin this, to paint me as the villain in her narrative.
She always did.
Sure enough, a week later, I opened Facebook to find a long, dramatic post from her, already garnering dozens of sympathetic comments from relatives and family friends. Today, I learned what it means to be abandoned by your own child. It began, her words dripping with self-pity. My husband and I, in our golden years, have been cast out like unwanted pets. Our eldest daughter, Tessa, had the police remove us from her vacation home like common criminals, leaving us with nowhere to go. The post went on, weaving a tale of woe that conveniently omitted key details, that they had given their house to Lily, that I had been paying their mortgage for years, that they had tried to move into my vacation home against my explicit refusal. I read it once, my stomach churning with a mix of anger and resignation, then closed the app. I didn't respond, didn't engage. I had set my boundaries, and for the first time, I was determined to hold them. No matter how loudly my family tried to rewrite the story, as I scrolled through the comments on my mother's Facebook post, each one a dagger of judgment, my heart racing, I felt something inside me fracture. Words like heartless, cruel, and ungrateful leapt off the screen, hurled by distant relatives and family friends who knew only my mother's carefully curated version of the truth. The injustice of it ignited a fire in my chest. I couldn't stay silent any longer. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling with a mix of fury and resolve. It was time for everyone to hear the whole story, my story. I started typing, the words flowing like a long-suppressed confession. For years, I've kept quiet about family matters, I began, but since my mother has chosen to air our private issues publicly, I feel compelled to share my side of the story. Here are the facts, unfiltered and unembellished, that were conveniently omitted from her post. For the past 5 years, I've been paying the mortgage on my parents' house because they couldn't afford it due to health issues and reduced work hours at work. I did this willingly, out of love and duty because they're my family and they needed help. 3 weeks ago, at my sister Lily's wedding, a celebration I helped fund, my parents announced they were gifting their house, the one I'd been paying the mortgage for, to Lily and her new husband as a wedding gift. They made this decision without consulting me or even giving me a heads up. I paused, my heart pounding as I relived the sting of that moment. My fingers resumed their dance across the keyboard. After the wedding, when I finally confronted them, they informed me they planned to move into my vacation home, a property I purchased with my own savings, years of overtime, and weekend shifts before I worked tirelessly to afford before I even met my husband, Mark. They'd worked this out the entire plan with my sister Lily before her wedding. She would get their house, and they would take my vacation property.
No one thought to ask me.
When I refused to let them move into my vacation home, they attempted to move in anyway. They used a spare key I'd given them for emergencies, triggering the security system. That's why the police were involved. I leaned back, rereading my words, ensuring they carried the weight of my truth. Contrary to my mother's post, I didn't have them arrested. I did, however, have the police remove them from my property because they were trespassing. I then paid for a storage unit for their belongings, ensuring their possessions were safe. If my parents need a place to stay, perhaps they should ask my sister, who now owns a 4-bedroom house, thanks to them and, indirectly me, since I paid for it. I added a final paragraph, my voice steady in the text. I've always done my best to support my family, but I won't be taken advantage of or vilified for refusing to surrender my property after already carrying theirs for years. Family is a two-way street, built on mutual respect, not entitlement or manipulation. It's not about taking whatever you want just because we share blood. I hit post before doubt could creep in, my pulse racing with a mix of defiance and vulnerability. Mark, reading over my shoulder, gave me a thumbs up, his quiet approval grounding me. "You did the right thing," he said softly. "They can't keep twisting the narrative." The response was immediate. Comments flooded in, not just from cousins, aunts, and uncles, but also from some of my parents' friends. Unlike the vitriol on my mother's post, these were supportive, even shocked. "I had no idea you were paying their mortgage." "That's so unfair," one cousin wrote. "Wait, they gave away a house you were paying for? That's insane," another friend commented. I should have felt vindicated, my truth finally acknowledged, but instead, I felt an overwhelming exhaustion. Broadcasting this publicly, even to defend myself, didn't bring the satisfaction I'd hoped for. It was like airing a wound to the world, raw and painful for all to see. 2 days later, my cousin Jessica called, her voice warm but tinged with concern. "Hey, Tessa, I wanted to check on you," she said. "You okay after all that online drama?" "Barely," I admitted, sinking into my couch. "What's the latest?" "I'm sure there's more." Jessica hesitated, then spilled the news. "Your parents tried to go back to their house, Lily's house now, but she wouldn't let them in." I sat up straighter, my grip tightening on the phone. "Seriously?" "Yeah," Jessica continued. "Apparently, Lily told them it's her house now, and there's no room for them. They're staying in some rundown apartment now, and your mom had to go back to working full-time to cover the rent. Her arthritis is acting up, but they can't afford to slow down."
I didn't know how to process that.
Part of me, a cold, pragmatic part, thought they deserved it. They'd engineered this mess, giving away their home without a plan, assuming I'd bail them out as always. But another part, the daughter who still remembered mom's bedtime stories and dad's bad dad jokes, felt a pang of sympathy. They were my parents, flawed and selfish as they were, and the image of them struggling in a cramped, dingy apartment tugged at my heart. "Thanks for letting me know," I said, my voice quieter now. After we hung up, I relayed the conversation to Mark as we sat at our kitchen table, the remnants of dinner between us. "It's just karma," he remarked, his tone matter-of-fact as he sipped his coffee. "Yeah," I agreed, stirring my tea absent-mindedly. "But I don't feel as satisfied as I thought I would. I thought I'd feel, I don't know, righteous?" "That's because you're a good person, Tessa," Mark said, reaching for my hand. "Unlike some people we could mention. You care, even when they don't deserve it." Over the next few weeks, my parents tried to contact me repeatedly. Their names flashed on my phone screen. Missed calls, voicemails I couldn't bring myself to listen to, texts I left unread. The hurt was still too raw, a wound that hadn't yet scabbed over. One night, as Mark and I were getting ready for bed, he paused while brushing his teeth and looked at me through the bathroom mirror. "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" he asked, his voice muffled by toothpaste. I sat on the edge of the bed, pulling my hair into a loose braid as I considered his question. "Maybe someday," I said finally. "Not for their sake, but for mine. Carrying all this anger, it's like poison. It's not healthy. But I'm not there yet." "And Lily," he pressed, rinsing his mouth and joining me on the bed. I sighed, the weight of her betrayal heavier somehow. "That's more complicated. She knew what they were planning. She was part of it, scheming behind my back. And then, when they needed her, she turned them away. It's like she's only loyal to herself." Mark pulled me close, his arm warm around my shoulders. At least you know where you stand now, he said. No more illusions about who's important to them and who isn't. He was right. As painful as this ordeal had been, it had shattered the pretense I'd clung to for years. The desperate hope that I could earn my parents' approval, that I could be as cherished as Lily was in their eyes. Now, I knew that was a mirage, a goal I'd never reach. Strangely, that knowledge was liberating. It freed me from the exhausting cycle of seeking their validation, allowing me to redefine my worth on my own terms. The next morning, another call from my mother lit up my phone. I stared at her name, my thumb hovering over the decline button. This time, I let it go to voicemail, curious but not ready to engage. Later, alone in my office during a lunch break, I played the message, her voice filling the quiet room. Tessa, she began, her tone different now, smaller, less demanding, almost broken. We made a mistake. A big one. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But please call us back. We need to talk. I deleted the message without responding, my heart a tangle of emotions. Maybe someday I'd be ready to hear their apology, if that's what they were offering. Maybe someday I'd be open to rebuilding a relationship, but it would be on new terms, with clear boundaries forged from the lessons of this betrayal. Not today, though. Today, I was still learning to prioritize myself, to claim the space I'd always given away so freely. It was a skill I should have mastered long ago, but better late than never. As for my vacation home, I decided to list it for rent. The extra income would be a welcome buffer, and I liked the idea of the cottage being filled with life, new stories, new laughter, rather than sitting empty as a monument to this family drama. The decision felt like closing a door, not just on the property, but also on TH. Please feel free to comment below if you liked this. Remember to like and subscribers for more, a part of me that had always yielded to my family's demands. I was ready to move forward, one deliberate step at a time. Please feel free to comment below if you liked this. Remember to like and subscribers for more.